Hi folks, welcome back. Of course, we've been looking at the latest in AI in the videos on this channel, but I want to change and I want to go back a little bit. Over the past 2, 3 years, as we've been building AI agents, this whole notion of how you have a human in the loop, how you automate work, especially knowledge work, has really come up for a much larger audience than before. But at the same time, I find that this very simple and shallow way that we talk about human in the loop is entirely inadequate to the complexities of how we automate complex work, some with machinery, some with humans. And that's why I want to go back. There is a deep literature going back decades, 40, 50, 60 years, that looks at this question. It goes under various different fields: cognitive psychology, human factors, human computer interaction, and so on. And I want to start a new series of videos that goes back and looks at this literature because I think in large part the AI community today has completely ignored this literature, and it is to their detriment because this literature has some really great insights on how to think about work that is accomplished by a combination of humans and machines, and how to do that in a way that is actually net productive, net beneficial, and is actually good for the humans involved. So, like I said, there's a deep literature going back many decades, and I want to make a series of videos. But today I want to start with one of the landmark touchstone papers on this topic. It's called The Ironies of Automation by Lisanne Bainbridge. It was published back in 1983. And like you see in the, if I can hold this right, in the abstract, the idea this paper is trying to explore is the ways in which automation of industrial processes may expand rather than eliminate problems with the human operator. And this paper is foundational because a deep implicit assumption that we all make is that automation is inherently good. And by automation, we almost always mean automation of the human. Whereas what Bainbridge is saying is that automation is extremely complex, and in order for it to be good, you have to do it right. And that is the mechanism that she is trying to explore in this paper. So, like the title says, it looks at the ironies of automation. And what she means by ironies is that we automatically assume that automation is good, but when we do it in a naive manner, do it in a manner that is not quite right, we find a lot of problems. That's what she was talking about in the abstract, that adding automation might actually increase the problems you see rather than decrease them. And this, at a superficial level, sounds very counterintuitive. How can it be that automation actually hurts rather than help? So let's quickly look at the 5 or 6 major ways that she points out in the paper that this actually happens. So there's one central irony in the paper, which is that automation, if done naively, often results in the easy parts of a job getting easier and the hard parts of the job getting harder. That is the core idea behind these ironies. Now, you might ask, how does that happen? What are the mechanisms by which that happens? So let's look at those one by one. The first way this happens is that humans are removed from the system, or the work is automated because they are unreliable. They make mistakes. That is kind of a key premise of even the motivation to automate in the first place. However, these same humans must rescue the system when something goes wrong. They must jump in and rescue the system when something goes wrong. And therein lies the problem. How exactly are they expected to do that? And so you have a number of cascading effects from this one mechanism. The first cascading effect is that automation removes practice. And this practice is the very thing that humans need in order to get good at whatever the task is that they're doing. If instead of performing the task, humans are automated away, this results in skill atrophy. So they understand less and less about how this task is done, the nuances of doing it. And then paradoxically, when something goes wrong and they have to rescue the system in the event of a failure, they aren't very well equipped to do that. And then you have to even look at the mechanisms via which humans come into rescue. So how do you know that something has gone wrong? How do you know that there is a failure, and how do you even react to a failure? And there's two ways to look out for failures. One is for humans to monitor the system. And this is just a horrible idea to start with because there are tons and tons of studies in the literature which show that humans are really bad at passive vigilance, which is to say, if all you're doing is staring at something, looking for something to go wrong, humans are really bad at this. This is the equivalent of a railway engine driver having to stay up all night, but nothing ever happens and they fall asleep. All right, so you don't want to do passive vigilance. What's the other solution? The other solution is that you have alarms. You have automated alarms, which will beep and wake you up or notify you in some way if something goes wrong. And of course, in software engineering, we're all familiar with carrying pages. This is what we're doing when we're carrying pages. Now, the issue with automated alarms is the underlying cognitive and psychological issue is that when you actually get this alarm, it is very hard to get an up-to-date mental model of the system. So, of course, when you get an alarm, your first instinct, rightly so, is to understand what went wrong and to understand the state of the system. You have to understand the state of the system, and then you have to have a good mental model of how the system works and why the state that the system is currently in is a bad state. And going back to the point about skill atrophy, this knowledge and experience and judgment required to have an up-to-date mental model of the system and the state of the system and why it is in a bad state becomes harder and harder the more you're automated away. So these are some of the underlying cognitive and human factors that are trying to tell us that, look, it is really hard. You have to think deeply to automate systems in a way that make the overall effect net positive. So I'll stop there because I just wanted to establish a baseline for some of the videos further in the series. And in future videos, we'll look at some other models based on human cognition, based on observing how humans perform tasks, on how automation can be done, the various levels of automation. So I hope you enjoyed that and stay tuned for future videos in the series. Thank you.